Welcome to the Nerdy Here Weekly Daredevil Born Again recap episode. Bruno, we're doing a midweek thing because comics are on TV and we're excited about it for once.
It is Wednesday, however, comic book day.
Oh, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that synthesis on their end. Yeah, so we are here teaming up because we are going to be in the feeds as routinely as we can make happen to talk about Daredevil Born Again, which is the either first or fourth series of a Daredevil show. We'll talk about it. On Disney Plus, it's coming out, in the evenings on Tuesdays. That's the
Yes,
release right now.
it's Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, math 6 p.m. Pacific time, depending on where everyone's at. But yeah, and then available the next day on Disney Plus for anyone who wants to just catch it then as well.
Yeah, so then we'll be on sometime. Our goal is to be out pretty quickly after that Tuesday night release date. So we're watching it then. We're taking some notes. We're talking through it with each other on Wednesday. And then, you can hopefully look for this either on a Thursday or a Friday release date, usually, as we move forward. If you don't have it by then, it's likely we just skipped a week.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's how this show is going to work. We just wanted to let everyone know this is a new thing we're trying out. So if you like it, please let us know. And then we're going to talk about Daredevil. Bruno, I didn't realize going into this project that you had not watched Netflix's Daredevil.
No, I had not. I had been putting it off for the longest time because I just thought that it was something that we would never be revisiting again, and
Sure. Right.
it's something
that doesn't seem in any way relevant to anything that's happening in the MCU right now. They abandoned all of that.
It just I, I don't know. Like, I think at the time when I was made very aware of the show, it was already deep into season 3, and at that point it was already so far into it that I just didn't bother going back to check it out. And then over the past couple of weeks, I've been just binging through, starting right from season 1 all the way to season 3. I had previously seen Jessica Jones, and
Okay.
I did during this first watch of Daredevils was also my first watch of Defenders, another show that I also
I was going to ask.
really
Okay.
enjoyed.
Okay.
I do have yet to watch Luke Cage, and we'll see if I get to Iron Fist. That's very, very low on the priority list, but I will be getting into Luke Cage hopefully later this weekend. We'll see.
I really liked the first season of Luke Cage. I don't know if I watched the second season. So my experience with the Defenders universe was that that first season came out in 2015, I want to say. That was when the first season of Daredevil was released. And it was
I believe it was 15 to 16. Sorry, go ahead.
So it was sort of right in the wake of that like it was coming out of Avengers success, right? Like this was one of the things they announced after Avengers was so successful, was like, also we're doing a deal with Netflix and they're going to do a Daredevil TV show and there's going to be more. So I was very excited for it when the first season came out. I remember really, really enjoying the first season. But it seemed like the sort of thing I was thinking about it because I also rewatched the first season and then like the first half of the second season. Right. And that's sort of where I stopped. But I really just had wanted to make sure I got through that first one because I remembered it being so good. And I feel like there's just diminishing returns on everything in that universe, just sort of from that point forward. Like Jessica Jones is also really good in season 1.
Absolutely.
And then after that was Daredevil season 2, which I think is still pretty good, but sort of starts to get like sort of clogged up. Like already by that point, we've abandoned the premise of doing street level heroes, right? Like you start to get the Hand, you get magic ninjas, you get resurrecting girlfriends, and then you get like Power Man, who is a street level hero, but like has his own sort of power set that makes you want to do him like the Hulk, right? Like you want to throw a lot of stuff at this guy. But I think that show was really, really good. And I really liked the story they ended up telling with him. But then by the time you get to Shang-Chi, it's like, well, we can't have him punch a dragon because we're sort of pretending like that part of the universe doesn't exist.
Right.
But also we have to do a compelling show with a blonde white lead about a martial arts expert in 2019? No, earlier than that. But yeah, like this, the whole project got really unwieldy really quickly. But I still think
remember I remember when I first saw the trailer of Iron Fist way back. One of the things that like immediately called out to me, aside from just how this story just doesn't work in the modern landscape whatsoever, but I like just based off the general premise from that trailer, I was like, this is just Arrow. They're just doing Arrow, but with like magic.
Mm. I mean, honestly, I think, yeah. I think a lot of those shows, when they are successful, are aping off of stuff, though. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
was surprised to see how much I thought that the Daredevil thing, like the whole sort of central conceit of how that show was working, felt very indebted to Batman, right? And
Absolutely.
I know there's like a lot of Frank Miller like origin stuff there to be weeded out, but I mean like the way they're attacking it as like a production, and they have
Mm-hmm.
like Urich is sort of just the James Gordon, and the priest is just sort of Alfred, and the relationships with Foggy and Karen are like other relationships that we can sort of imagine how Batman would deal with these things, right? Um, and he's sort of modeled as like rich guy that has this need to go out at night that was very recently done very successfully by the Nolan movies. And so I think there's a lot of like inspiration being drawn from that. But I think they make it their own thing and then it works. I don't know that the Iron Fist guys made Arrow their own thing as much as maybe they just like sort of did the same thing
Right.
Arrow was doing.
Yeah. No. Exactly. Yeah.
And the lead was insufferable. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
he, he was good. He was very good. I felt like in his role in Game of Thrones, but he sort of brought the same energy of that over to that Danny Rand performance. And I didn't
Right.
think it worked.
I enjoyed what I saw of him in Defenders, but in Defenders he had much more of a backseat, and like the way that his character, I guess, was worked in that sense. I don't know
Yeah,
if it, yeah,
I
and
do feel like
I could see why it wouldn't work in a lead character perspective.
I also do feel like the characters in Defenders know that he's such a tool. Like I feel like they treat him sort of like the
Mm-hmm.
way I feel about him, which that helps me in Defenders, which I have like mixed feelings on sort of through the
I
whole thing.
his first conversation with Luke Cage in Defenders, I was like, oh, they're self aware. That's nice. That's good.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. So, okay, so you had seen none of this going into this project, and then you rewatched all of it to get yourself ready for this new iteration of Daredevil on Disney Plus, right? This is happening because the rights had reverted back from Netflix to Disney. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of discussion about sort of rebooting some of those characters on the Disney side. Then there was this big Twitter campaign that was like hashtag Save Daredevil got trending on Twitter. And there's been reporting that Bob Iger noticed that. And then based on that social media traffic, sort of recast Charlie Cox in 2021 and then started working him into the MCU. We saw him in Spider-Man No Way Home. We saw him in Hawkeye. We saw him in She-Hulk. Sorry, we didn't see him in Hawkeye. We
No,
saw
yes, we
Vincent
saw
D'Onofrio,
Kingpin.
the
Yes,
Kingpin, in Hawkeye and Echo. So we've been like working our way here for a long time. This show was delayed originally because this original version of it apparently was not up to par. It was described as a PG-rated legal drama where Matt Murdock didn't get into a
right.
costume for 4 episodes. There was no Foggy. There was no Karen. All of this got overhauled. So they did like a whole second pass on it. They shot 3 new episodes. They shot a new pilot. They added additional scenes to all the stuff that had already been shot. Really made it a new show. But that has resulted in, is it 6 years since we saw Charlie Cox as Daredevil on TV, and 10 years since the original show ran.
Yes, that does sound right. Yeah.
What are you sort of, I guess, expecting, having like binged all this stuff in really quick succession, exposed yourself to the universe, and now you're like, all right, now let's go see what Disney can do with this? What were you expecting?
I I was worried at first because especially having seen how like dark and gritty the show is up until this point, I had noticed that Disney doesn't do the best job when it comes to that. They did pretty decent with the action scenes that I had seen in Echo beginning of last year, but it was there were still a couple of bits here and there that it would be it's hard to explain, but like Disney Disney has sort of a need to put like a CGI filter on top of everything. Like
Mm,
even scenes that you don't necessarily need CGI in there, and you can kind of like notice it a lot of times here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that I think that was like my biggest concern. Just like from a nitpicking standpoint, was just like how much CGI were they going to be using in this continuation of Daredevil compared to how it was used in the original. Um, the overhaul, when we got to the creative overhaul of it all, that brought some hope back to me, because again, like the PG rating of it all, that was something that was a bit of a turnoff for me, even though I hadn't seen the show up until that point. What I had seen of him in She-Hulk was a bit out of character of just what I knew about the Daredevil mythos from reading the comics. It was, well, no, maybe not entirely out of character. It was, he was being a ladies' man, but that's all that I saw.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to the character.
Matt
But
Murdock do be fucking. That is true. Yeah. Had you read a lot
yeah,
of the comics?
I did. I read a lot of the original Frank Miller. I read a lot of Man Without Fear from, I'm blanking on his first name, Soul, and then I obviously read Chip Zdarsky's run from a couple of years from a few years ago that he did with Marco Cicchetto. That's actually how I got like into both of those creative minds of just
Oh, okay.
Zdarsky and Cicchetto in general. So that was that. Those were just the I've read a lot of Daredevil. Those are the ones that like definitely come to stick to me the most.
Okay. Yeah. I had not been as into the character on the comic side of things. You're always more into the Marvel stuff than I am, but I definitely have. Oh, am I going to be able? Yeah, here it is. I read the Bendis run.
Perfect. No, Bendis run is also a great one.
Which I thought was really, really good. And I remember getting that when the show was going to get started. That was like going to be my homework.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got pretty into those, and I've always thought I would like the character more if I read more of the comics. I just have never done that work. What I had seen, what I had consumed, what I had enjoyed, dare I say, granted I was a very small boy,
Mm-hmm.
um, was a little film starring Mr. Ben Affleck.
Oh yes, yes sir. Yes, we all have a guilty pleasure for that movie. Let's be honest.
So even when the original was coming on, I was like, oh, it would be so interesting to see what like a dark sort of modern uh MCU version of that character would be, remembering the Ben Affleck movie as sort of a clunky but lovable failure. Um Sort of having, I think, more appreciation for it now, just if nothing else, like it's
Absolutely.
it's it's a different thing. Like it's
Hmm.
not the same thing reheated. That's sort of, I feel like, the problem we run into. But that's the whole reason the Daredevil movie was so like compelling, right? Was because it
Right.
was embracing the different thing. So that was one of those different thing movies. And I was like, oh, it'd be so neat to see what they could do with that. They spun up the Netflix machine to do it. It was really dark and violent and sort of mature, and it felt, people always say like, oh, they took it seriously and about comic book stuff, and that's not what I'm trying to get at here, but like the art direction felt really scuzzy in a way that like the MCU feels so pristine.
Yeah. Hmm. I think
And
no. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was rewatching it this week. I was still struck by like, oh, like their law firm is a shithole. Like Matt's apartment is really nice, but it's because he doesn't have, it's because all these lights shine through the windows and he's blind, right? But
Right.
like, but even in its niceness, it is like real working class and a little bit like beaten down, right? And the whole characterization of that neighborhood is done in that way to sort of represent Matt Murdock as a character, right? And his relationship to the city and all of that. I was apprehensive in the port over to the Disney Plus MCU era that it might get a little MCU, right? That
And
like
I
the visual homogeny might sort of overtake it, which is
and I
sort of something
think
you were getting at as well, in a
yeah.
way.
When I was talking about the CGI of it all, that's definitely like what I had in mind. Just like the cleansiness of everything in the MCU, and how much we don't see that in Daredevil.
But
Because
and right, and that is the case here. That is
yeah,
100% what happened. Like this
hmm
show, and I think we're gonna have a lot of good things to say about this show.
right,
This show looks like it takes place in the MCU.
it does. But I do think they still do a good job of keeping some of like the grittiness that we had from the old one,
And I think it's
especially
thematic. Like
comes yeah.
he doesn't live there anymore. He doesn't do that anymore. That's not him.
Mhm.
That was some other
No.
guy. That was sort of this embarrassing guy I was 10 years ago. That's not me now. Me now has a nice law firm.
Yeah.
Me now has a nice apartment,
No,
even though it's
actually,
sort of the same apartment.
I meant to like that was one thing that I was very curious about. Like, is his apartment still in Hell's Kitchen? I don't think it is. He
He says
looks
he
like
doesn't go back there. I guess they just wanted to keep the bit of,
yeah.
he sort of has an iconic apartment. He got a new apartment where the lights shine through. I like that as an idea. That this is
Hmm.
just now his real estate scheme, is he finds apartments that have big neon signs across the street. Uh, yeah, no, it felt important to the character in these first two
Absolutely.
episodes, and I'm like, okay, I'll give you a pass. Like, I'm in, let's do it. But it was the thing that I was like the most concerned about, was like, is this gonna look MCU gloopy? And then it did, but then there felt
They
like
made
there
it
was a
work.
thematic reason for it, and I was like, well, fine, okay, let's do that.
Yeah,
Let's
because
go there.
we were hit with the 1 year later, and I think somebody even pointed out that 1 year later, like the way that the tech showed up was exactly like the 5 years later from Endgame.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they know what they're doing with that. That was yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it, Bruno. So, what would you say that Daredevil Born Again is about? The thing that really stuck out to me in these first, so we got 2 episodes that came out on Disney Plus this week. The pilot, or not, well, so this is the thing. Is it a pilot? I guess it's not technically a pilot either way, but so we have this new thing called Daredevil Born Again, which is sort of season 4 of that show and is sort of season 1 of its own thing on Disney Plus.
Vincent
And
D'Onofrio has exclusively referred to it as season 4 and nothing else.
great. If that works for him, it works for me. So
Yeah.
here we are in season 4, and the first episode is an hour long. The second episode is like 49 minutes or something. We're going to talk through them. There's going to be spoilers. We're really going to get into it. We're really going to break some stuff down here. If you are worried about that, this is sort of your chance to jump off. We wanted to have a little bit of a non-spoiler buffer up front, to give people just time to adjust or whatever, and
Absolutely.
for social media promo. But now this is your time to skedaddle. We're going to start spoiling things. Come back later if you don't want things spoiled for you. All right. Bruno, I felt like in the first hour of the show, we get maybe what is the most important scene that we might get this whole show, but that we definitely got in these 2 episodes, which is Murdoch
Mm-hmm.
and Fisk sit down to get some coffee together, right? And they sort
No,
of
absolutely.
they exchanged like their whole philosophy on life in a way that was like, this is what this show's going to be about. It's going to be, see how these guys are sort of the same but sort of different. This is going to be a problem. And they made threats to each other about basically if either of them goes back to their old ways, that there will be consequences from the other one. This was interesting for a whole bunch of reasons we'll get to. Other stuff that happened in the episode. But in that confrontation, Matt says, he's talking about having grown up Catholic. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to find here. I wrote it down in my notes. But he has this whole point that he makes about how he grew up Catholic, and so he believes in forgiveness, but he also believes in like retribution, right?
Right.
And we're sort of set up like where this is what this show is going to be about, is we have these 2 guys who are both grappling with who they are as men, what they've done in their past, who the people that they want to be are now, and the things they're willing to do and not do to accomplish that, right? Like that's sort of what this show is going to be about. And I was just like, oh, I'm glad we just got that all wrapped up with a bow for us in the first episode to really give us
Right.
a signal like this is thematically what this TV show is about. I like that scene a lot. Was there anything? What would you say this show is about, or like what early stuff here are you grabbing onto in terms of like what's happening in this television show?
Like you just said, we're pretty much going to be covering the two parallels between Matt and Fisk as they go on these paths that they do their best to not intersect, but eventually, like consequences is just going to lead to them intersecting anyways. And then I think that is just going to lay the groundwork for the eventual season two, but then also the eventual like introduction to other things in the MCU because I think in the end that is like their eventual like overarching what you call like desire with everything because otherwise
Yeah.
Fisk wouldn't have listed Spider-Man next to Punisher in that one speech that he did at the beginning of the show.
Do you think Holland shows up in this?
No. I think maybe we see Spidey, but I don't think he's gonna take off the mask.
A really important distinction that I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought up. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. A great point there. So it's not going to be, and I wanted to give you space to complain about this. Everything that you just described, I think, sounds totally reasonable. It's not going to be Daredevil Born Again is a thing.
Right. That's one thing that I sort of joked about before we even started recording because as far as like the actual themes and story beats, like when it comes to like the comics, it doesn't seem like they're pulling anything, or it doesn't seem like they're pulling too much out of Born Again. And like the main reason for that is that Born Again, for anyone who doesn't know, has been adapted very heavily into season 3.
I was going to say it's basically the season 3 plot.
If you guys are curious at all about Born Again and like don't want to read like the original Born Again comic, just rewatch season 3 and you'll get the basic gist of it. Here we're getting a lot of Bendis's Man Without Fear. We're getting a lot of Zdarsky's No Fear, and then just overall Devil's Reign, which is like the big culmination of Fisk's arc as mayor of New York City. And I think that's mainly the things that we are touching on for this one. That's also like what I'm very excited to see. I'm excited to see a lot of Fisk's manipulation while also getting little hints of what he could be doing in the background that we don't even know about. There's a little few hints that we already saw in these first 2 episodes, and I'm curious to see how much we'll see from that.
Yeah. What do you expect? I mean, let's just talk about it a little bit. Like having seen sort of how they set him up in these first couple episodes, like he seems good at this.
He's doing a really, really good job at being a good boy. But there was also that one shot, like I think it was in the second episode, where like his knuckles were very clearly like scratched, like he was recently punching someone. Yeah, that was very curious. And then like I think in that same scene, just the power move of like straight up blackmailing the police commissioner, which was also not something that you should be doing if you're like mayor of New York City.
Commissioner, let's talk about compromise.
I'm surprised by how fast they're starting to how fast they're starting to show his hand to at least us viewers.
I mean, well, but this is the thing. In Daredevil, Netflix season 1, they took forever to get to that shit. Like, there was like
that's true
3 or 4 episodes of my employer, right? That one guy, Wesley, driving around talking to the crime affiliated, referring to his employer before we even got the name Wilson Fisk. Like they milked it for so long in that first season of Daredevil. We didn't get the costume for Maddie until Maddie. I've been thinking about how all the different people call Matt something different in that show. So like, so Stick is Maddie, and then
Punisher's Red.
Karen is Matt. Punisher's Red. Elektra is Matthew. Yeah, they all have something different they call him in that show, and I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But so I said Maddie, and I was like, Maddie. Uh, uh, but he doesn't get his costume until the finale. Like that
Yeah.
season, and look, part of it is because that black costume is so much cooler. Like
No.
objectively, that black
To the point.
costume is a lot cooler than the
To
red
the point
one.
that all of season 3,
Is
the bad
but with
guy
the
has the red
ropes.
suit, and he's just back to the black suit.
Yeah, but he's got the ropes on his fists now.
The white tie ropes was a really nice touch. I like those a lot.
Yeah, so
We're
anyway,
digressing.
I was glad that in this they were like, no, you know what, 20 minutes into episode 1, Fisk's the mayor now. Like we just got down to business.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I've done my waiting in the Daredevil universe, and if we're in the new streamlined world of Bob Iger's Disney, I wanted to get down to business, and I was glad that we did sort of just jump right into the action. What did you think? Let's talk characters for a little bit. We're not doing like a straight recap podcast, so we don't have to like get to the
Right.
action or anything. There's some set pieces and stuff that we'll talk about. Um, I think the biggest spoiler though is probably about to come up now. Let's talk a little bit about characters and how do you how do you think Matt's doing?
Oof, buddy.
Matt had a rough one in these 2 episodes. I mean, he didn't have the roughest one.
He
Our guy Foggy Nelson had the roughest one.
yeah. Yeah. One thing that I really
Let's just do it like a band-aid in case people are listening and haven't watched the episode. Foggy got shot and killed by Bullseye. The man
right.
Bullseye shot and killed our best friend Foggy Nelson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was all a brilliant setup of just him luring Foggy out into the open outside of Josie's bar.
Yep.
Um, I
Getting
I
Matt to
genuinely
run away, tricking Matt
right.
into running away, and then popped him one.
Mm-hmm. It was, and like one of the things that was very that I thought was really a really good use of just the sound mixing is that you could like Matt as he was running off to go check in at the decoy place, he could hear the gun loading back
Yep.
at Josie's. He could hear like the
Yep.
deep breath from Dex. He already knew what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I liked in the early, so it only happened really well. No, it happened
Mhm.
throughout. I like the effects they are using to signify Matt's use of his powers. Right.
No, so the first time he used it, sorry to just
So when
just
they
cut you off.
no, but when they break letterbox, like when the
What do you
aspect
mean?
ratio changes. Is that what you were gonna say?
Oh no, no, I was
Oh,
I was talking about the lens flare. Did you notice the lens flare?
yes.
That was just brilliant. The lens flare because it just focused on his ear as he was just trying as all of the sounds was just coming into him, and as he focused in on like Foggy, the lens flare just started moving towards Foggy. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, there's also an early one. I thought this was the first one, but I might have got it mixed up. Where the whole TV show before that is in like 16:9, like letterbox framing, and then he starts using his super senses, and it goes to full screen,
Oh, maybe
which
I need to check that out. I didn't see
which
that.
I thought was really cool. I liked a lot as just a format nerd.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Foggy gets shot by Daredevil, and then
Bullseye.
by Bullseye, and Daredevil can't save him, and so then we kind of have, like you said, 1 year later Flash, and as I was alluding
Well,
to,
hold on. It's it's
oh
we cannot just brush over the fact that once Foggy died, Daredevil was just like, okay, you're dead too, and then just push
oh yeah
Bullseye off
yeah
a roof.
no, that's a great point. Yeah, he did, then just drop his ass off this building with the most indifference I've ever seen on a human's
Right.
face while probably doing a murder. Turns out he's not
Bullseye,
dead, but
yes,
he
Bullseye
should have
did
been.
survive, but we all knew what was Matt's intention there.
Yeah.
Also, just quick shout out to just Deborah Ann Wall's acting in that scene when the body
Mm,
dropped behind her, and you could just see the fear on her face, trying to figure out if it was Matt or not.
yeah. Yeah. No, this whole sequence was really good, and we're gonna drill down on it in a little bit. But yeah, so having lost his best friend and attempted murder, Matt decides he doesn't want to be Daredevil anymore. And then we get this 1 year later Flash, and now Matt has this nice apartment and this law firm that looks like it's out of central casting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like getting set up on blind dates with therapists. by his coworker. Um, he's got a very different life all of a sudden, but he sort of can't help but get sucked back into this shit as soon as Wilson Fisk runs for and then gets elected mayor. Like that's
Yes.
sort of what breaks it. Like he's sort of had like a year of not being Daredevil, and then Fisk shows up, and now he can't not be Daredevil. And like he's not putting on the costume and going out at night. He starts just like nibbling around the edges. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll have my guy, who's like my personal detective I have on retainer. I'll have him like beat the bushes on Fisk, just like see if anything's
Yeah.
going on there. But it slowly escalates up to like, I am going to use my super hearing to spy on the police interrogations, and I'm going to take this case that sounds dangerous and sort of like a Daredevil thing, right? This sounds like a Daredevil episode. I'll go do that.
He
Um,
immediately starts reverting to his past tendencies as soon as Fisk gets back in the picture.
yeah, yeah. I really liked that as characterization for him and like how he's
Mm-hmm.
dealing with this. You know, there was this scuttlebutt behind the scenes while they were making the show, right? That like originally Born Again was going to totally ignore original continuity.
Yeah,
They had recast Vanessa. You saw about this?
I did. Like it was at the level, and like they had recast Vanessa. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
we saw a different person playing Vanessa in Echo. Um, there was also like up until this point, there still hasn't been explanation as to how Wilson Fisk got out of prison, because
Mm-hmm.
the entire intention of Hawkeye and Echo is that I think the idea was that he was never going to be in prison in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's definitely a lot that they still got to work around when it comes to that. But
Well,
um,
the part of this original news had been that there was going to be no Foggy and no Karen, that
right.
they were not a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the big things that people had negative reactions to. I think that this opening, it could have been a real gimmick, right? It could have been like in Thor the Dark, or in Thor Ragnarok, where like they break his hammer and they cut his hair and they take away his friends and they change his costume, and like all of that is done like in the first 15 minutes of the movie, to be like, this is a new guy. This isn't the guy you're
Right.
thinking of. Um, there could have been a feeling of that to all of this. That like they've got to make him Disney's Daredevil, so let's watch all his nice stuff get broken. No,
Yeah.
it felt really tied to the character. It felt
Mm-hmm.
really essential to the themes of the show, and also it felt really comic booky,
Oh
uh,
no, absolutely.
in a way that I liked. So, but yeah, so Matt's not doing great right now. Um, Karen at one point asks him, well, here, okay. So I wanted to ask you how. Uh, so okay, Karen asks him, what about Daredevil, right? Because he's not doing Daredevil anymore. And he
Right.
says, I made a promise to myself that I'd let the system handle it, all of it. Besides, I'm not him anymore, and I won't let myself be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think when he says that, he believes it?
No, absolutely not. He's trying to convince himself.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
because I was going to ask, like, how long do you think? Obviously, we end episode 2 where we end it, which is some cops are going to shoot him in the head. So he does Daredevil fighting and
Right. He
potentially
kind
kills them, but at the very
he,
least, really does some damage.
he gets
Um,
forced into the situation for sure
yeah,
in the second episode.
but he does a quick Daredevil. He does do a
Mm-hmm.
quick Daredeviling.
Oh
Um,
no, absolutely.
how long do you think until he puts the costume on?
Until he puts the costume on.
Yeah.
Ooh.
When do you think we see full on? Because what, this is 9 episodes, and then we're getting another 9 dumped later.
Yes, I believe that's the idea. I think we're getting a
Which
9
is
episode season
that's
now.
one season. That's 18 episodes is one season of television.
Not
We used to be
not
a
in
country.
today's age, Riley. Not in
No,
today's
I know.
age.
We used to be a real
Not
country.
actually. Hold on. Not since 2016. So sit down.
Well, yeah. I'm saying you just watched 3 13-episode seasons of Daredevil.
That's true. That's true. But yeah,
But anyway, yeah.
I, I
I
digress. I think it will be will maybe it might. could it still be 4 episodes before we see the suit?
It could be 4. Yeah.
Because the way everything is framed right now, I could definitely see, because like we already have the third episode coming in next week,
Mm-hmm.
and that's for sure already going to open with Cherry, his private investigator friend, running into him, seeing what happened, and then trying to keep Matt in his lane because Cherry knows,
Yep.
which is another very big thing. Cherry knows he used to be Daredevil,
Yep.
so I
Cherry,
think
who's a retired cop.
yes. So if anything, I think we might soon see something happen to Cherry or Heather, the therapist, or anyone, maybe his law firm partner, and then that is when we finally get Daredevil back. Now, that's not saying he's not going to be fighting. I think we will definitely be seeing some fighting next episode, the episode after that. But I think there might be one more tipping point for him before he actually goes back to being Daredevil.
Well, as Kingpin taught us this week, it's difficult to control a violent nature, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll start to see some more of that violence pour out of him. Um, where do you see him as fitting into sort of your comic book understanding of like classic Daredevil and like thematically in terms of like sort of what makes this character who he is, and like what's important to the character? You know, obviously we talked a little bit earlier about like the Frank Millerization of him
Mm-hmm.
becoming this like guilt-ridden Catholic figure, right? Miller has that one liner that everybody always enjoys that like only a Catholic could be a lawyer and a superhero. Um, where do you like, and that was very core to especially the season 1 on the show, but really the Netflix version of the show. Is
Absolutely.
there, where do you see him fitting in thematically in like the overall Daredevil canon right now?
Right now, I am seeing a lot of, as I previously mentioned, No Fear, because with No Fear, they kind of sort of like started drifting a little bit more away from like his Catholic upbringing. It's still there, and we still see that in Born Again, but we haven't been seeing. As, that's definitely like a big difference from the Netflix shows that we haven't been seeing it as much.
Mm-hmm. And
We're
what
touching.
are, oh sorry, keep going.
No, please.
I was just going to say like what are sort of the things, if those are some things we're getting rid of when we shift into that era, what are things that we're gaining that like we should maybe expect the character or the story to take on this season? Like what are the other like thematic trappings that go, okay, we're not doing the Catholicism thing as much anymore, we are doing uh is it like um because I have a theory I want to float your way later, but I'm trying to educate myself on it before I make myself sure. Is it like street level bad guys, is it like mob crime, is it like mystic judo stuff, right? Like sort of where are we in the Daredevil world in that era?
I think we're going to be touching a little bit both on, I guess, like mob drama, as well as mystic fantasy,
Okay.
because we got some mystic fantasy out of Echo already, and Echo had like there are some Daredevil runs with Echo in there where she is using like she never really had mystic powers in the comics, but there are like some Daredevil comics where it relates more to her like indigenous connections, and that could
Okay.
sort of like be used for that. And then we have White Tiger, who like very briefly brought up his amulet and how his amulet comes with like powers and
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Right,
well,
right, right, right.
actually,
The White
sorry,
Tiger stuff's
it,
happening.
excuse me, it's not relevant. It's not relevant. It's not relevant. Anyways, um, but I think on the one note, we're touching in a lot of that, and then when it comes to like the mob drama, this is where, as you mentioned with first season, how they were like sort of like chasing the Batman coattails of the Chris
hmm
Nolan movies.
hmm
Here we, I'm blanking now on what exactly the comic book runs are and the writers, but there was a brief modern era of Daredevil where he was a little bit more Bruce Wayne, and he was this like
mm.
um high ranking attorney like within like the law community, and like had like a decent amount of like income and like was working off of that. And that we already got, like as you pointed out, we already got a lot of that with like the 1 year later sequence and showing him in like
Yeah.
the high end apartment and everything.
I have the Marvel Unlimited app. I should use it more. So I'll try and get to that. Yeah. I okay, going back and watching season 1 of Daredevil, parens Netflix, it really struck me, and I think this is when my Batman thing started forming in my head. It really struck me how much the backstory we get around Fisk is similar to what we just got in the Penguin TV show.
I was catching a lot of those parallels as well. At least when I was watching season 1 of Daredevil, and we went
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
what happened with his dad. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot there.
And obviously I was so compelled by the Penguin TV show. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really cool to see it here. I was curious how much of that they were going to hold on to, because that is really, like, I think the most visceral part of that first season. You know, like, I don't mind the violence or whatever.
Right.
But that as like a backstory for that character, I mean, is not simpatico when laid next to like the more general vibes of the MCU. So
Um, I see what you mean, but it's something so integral to what makes Wilson Fisk
yeah,
Kingpin that
for
I
sure,
think it
no,
was it
for
was very
sure.
important for them to keep it, and especially with the rabbit in the snowstorm painting.
Well,
That's
you're not allowed to kill your dad with a hammer in the MCU. You're not allowed to do that. They'll tell you no if you try. That robot Kevin Feige from She-Hulk will
yeah.
find you and say, actually, you're not allowed to do that. So when there were like explicit call outs in the episode to like his dad,
Hmm.
the failed politician, I was like, oh shit, no, this is it's all canon. All that stuff happened. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't like just a casual remix of it or whatever. But then that makes it so interesting, because then I'm like, no, this is a criminal. This man's a known criminal entity. You can't let him be the mayor. And
Well,
hey, coming to
well,
you
well.
live from March 2025. So,
well, hey.
but like, you know what I mean? Like, I I'm glad that they just went for it. I think it would have been a problem that was exasperated if we had to linger over it. I do think saying yada yada Trump yada yada
Mhm.
works very well. But I am, you know,
Someone brought up that same concern on Reddit that I saw this morning, and the top comment was like, "And what planet are you from?"
right. Yeah, right. I think my complaint is more that, like, he sort of does this in season 1 of Daredevil. He like gets on TV and he's like, "You don't know me, but my name is Wilson Fisk and I want to be a good citizen."
That's true. That is true.
And then he does crimes and they have to stop him.
Mhm.
And so I guess when it started happening, I was sort of like, oh, is this like a remix where like
That's
the same stuff kind of happens but in different ways? And then if that is the case, is Vanessa actually the kingpin? But no, it seems like everything has happened.
right.
Vanessa has just been running the company
Hmm.
since Fisk disappeared, got out of jail somehow. We don't know how.
I hope they're going to explain how he got out of jail. In the show, like in this season, actually. In fact, I think originally it may have been something that they were going to explain in the second episode, but due to circumstances that we can get into later, there's a lot of stuff with this season storylines that they definitely had to move around.
Yeah.
Um, so and make a certain storyline a lot sooner rather than later. So I'm hoping that in a later episode we'll be seeing some explanation as to how he got out of prison, because right now that's like the one gaping plot hole that I am worried about
Hmm.
when it comes to this show, and like its continuation from the
So he
previous one.
so he goes to jail. He gets
Hmm.
out of jail. He disappears. Vanessa's been running the company.
Right.
His side of the episode sort of opens with him going to Vanessa's meeting, like uninvited,
Hmm.
clearing out the room just with his mere presence,
Yeah.
and being like, "Hey, I think we should do a great scheme where I become the mayor
and you're just running my
and
business.
you just keep doing what you're doing."
And she's just like, I've been doing that.
Well, this is the thing. This is what I mean. Yeah, I thought this was such a cool move on his side. So he says that. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm running the businesses. Like, I don't know why you're here. I don't know why you think I'd need your help. She's like, I've made the businesses bulletproof. And he's like, perfect. That's exactly right. That's the story, and you keep it up. And he like judos her so that her like defense of not needing him, he's like, yeah, exactly. You got it, Vanessa. And then he went and became the mayor, which he did. Mm-hmm. And along the way, we meet young master. Is it Michael Gandolfini?
Yes, Michael Gandolfini.
Michael Gandolfini, who's playing Daniel Blake, who in Marvel canon is the name of a character who is a Martian, who is disguised as a human. I do not expect that to be what Michael Gandolfini is playing in this Daredevil TV show.
I didn't know that. That's great.
yeah. I always search every character name in the fandom.
I also love how they like plucked, like, no offense to Michael Gandolfini, they definitely plucked the most New Yorker actor out of Hollywood and gave him the first F-bomb in the show.
yeah. They had him be a big Staten Island bro. But this is cool for, okay, look, you're never going to be able to cast Michael Gandolfini in anything and not evoke his father, right? Certainly not really the second thing he's done after the first thing was a prequel where he played his dad's character, right?
Yeah.
He's got some Tony Soprano just sort of baked into his DNA, literally, right? I think it is very interesting to cast him to play across from Vincent D'Onofrio, who I think has this Kingpin thing down. Like, let me get it clear. I don't think he needs help.
Right.
But, like, he is such a character out of the Tony Soprano school of TV scum villainy, right? Where it's like, he's sort of this bad guy we kind of love, who is full of braggadocio and charisma. And anytime he has, you know, sort of worked his way up from very humble roots to have his own empire of crime, right? Like there's parallels between these characters. Sticking Michael Gandolfini in the Kingpin's office is sort of just like, this guy, Tony.
Yeah.
Or other, less than savory construction-based New York area businessmen who venture into politics.
And I think he's sticking around. I think like,
and he rocks. He's so good doing his shitty little MAGA bullshit.
But and like, I don't mean just for like season 1 or like just the show. I think they specifically chose Michael Gandolfini, and they specifically like placed him in this like a sort of a role similar to what Maya and Dex have done before for Kingpin. They're setting something up for him, and I'm excited to see what that is.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that relationship goes. He's definitely, like, he got Kingpin's attention because he loves him so much, and he doesn't present like a kind of, I mean, this is the whole MAGA conundrum. Let me just say this, and then I can not talk about that anymore. I do think the Trump of it all worked. I wore it a little hard when it started. I was like, oh God, that is what happened, right? Yeah, oof. But I watched it twice to prepare for the podcast, and on the second time through, I was just like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Sometimes you elect a criminal.
Well, yeah.
Was it not as? Is this just me being old? Was it?
No. Like I caught it right off the bat as well, and then especially like with the hole filling scene.
Yeah. Where I have this quote written down. Yes, filling a hole like this, it's not rocket science. Remember, I told you that I'd get things done. Well, here I am getting them done.
It was at that scene that I was like, I cannot show my parents this show.
Oh yeah, that they'll get like yeah. No, okay, so it worked for me. I do think that I saw an interview with the directors of the show where they said they weren't really pulling on any specific current event stuff. I don't think that they need to be pulling on specific current event stuff. I think that the sort of American fear of the billionaire fascist has been around for a long time, and that's why Lex Luthor was the president, right? And
No,
then
and
it
I
just
think
sort of works naturally to also remind us of the time we're living in.
yeah, and reminder to the people who haven't read the comics, this happened in the comics.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like years ago. Like
Yes.
over a decade ago.
Right. Yeah, long time. This wasn't like in 2017 Kingpin ran for mayor. No. This was like in the 90s. What did you think about, especially in the second episode? So it's a very Kingpin centric story where he's got to go to sort of court the approval of like the fire chief and the police chief and the
Right.
DA and all these people who fucking hate him. And then that turns into him blackmailing the chief of police into not resigning so that he can have better public opinion polling. What did you make of all that sort of as a starting point for Kingpin the mayor?
I thought I was enjoying and this is not to take anything away. First off, I thought everything was great from this episode when it comes to the Kingpin, and I thought it was very beautifully done. However, I definitely thought that we were going to be getting a lot more of a slow burn before he started reverting to his old ways, or
maybe there'd be like an episode or two where he was like not going to be absolutely corrupt as hell,
right? Or maybe we would have like this Wesley type character who is completely disconnected from his campaign doing this stuff for him.
Yeah, new replacement Wesley, can I just say, isn't doing it for me.
No, but also he doesn't work because he's in the campaign office. You need someone who doesn't work there doing this shit.
Yeah. Oh no. I totally agree that he is also not going to be the correct guy for your criminal misdoings. But I kind of was like, oh, we've got a new Wesley. What's his name? Buck?
Yeah, I think it's Buck Chapman.
I was like, oh, we've got a new Wesley. Awesome. I loved Wesley. That was such a cool character. And this guy does not have the same. He doesn't have Wesley vibes.
Did Buck Cashman? Sorry, that's
Buck,
the character.
Yeah, Buck Cashman is no Wesley.
No, no idea who this guy is.
But anyway, yeah, you're right. He's also he works, but apparently everyone's just fine with it. No one cares.
With Buck?
I mean, no. With the mayor doing crimes.
Yeah, he just showed that to the commissioner of police, and he was just and the commissioner was like, "Okay, you have given me a life threat."
Hey, great threat, man. Yeah.
Although I think I rewatched it as well, and I think one thing that I hadn't caught my first time watching is that they mentioned that wasn't the commissioner's wife.
And so, yeah, it's his. No, right. When I saw the picture, I thought it was his wife and kid. It's like his girlfriend and his bastard child.
It's an infidelity situation.
Pardon my language. An infidelity situation. That's a better way of phrasing it. I don't know why I could only think of Game of Thrones ways to talk about that. Matt says, if this city actually elects him, maybe New York's getting the mayor it deserves. And Cherry says, that sounds cynical. And Matt says, or maybe I'm finally wising up.
God.
We will have to see it. Look, I mean,
the writing in the show is doing a great job, if you ask me.
Yeah. And even if the reports are true that they had to edit this thing like crazy to get it into something that worked, it's working.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to a new topic, so go, please.
No, I was sort of moving into a new topic as well, because when you mentioned the whole editing of it all, I could tell, at least with episode 2, that there was a lot of stuff getting moved around, stuff from that was probably originally later in the season that they plugged into that episode.
So it was originally supposed to be case of the week, right? Yeah. Matt Murdock, attorney at law. Here's his superhero themed lawyering night court this week. Right. Instead, that does not seem to be the approach we're taking. But one of those cases was White Tiger, right?
Yeah.
Which then sort of is going to now, it seems, be the overarching thread legally of at least the first half of this season. Yeah, go. I was just going to ask here. I have one quick question, and then let's get into White Tiger. Do you think we're done with Bullseye?
Like, I hope not. I put this in our show notes earlier. It's weird because I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword when it comes to whether or not we keep Bullseye in the show. Because on one hand, I really want him to stick around, and I would want him to come back. But we already have Muse confirmed to be showing up in the show at some point. Actually, for in some cases, we could say we already saw Muse in the show so far. And when you have Muse and Bullseye like in the same show in the same season, we could start dealing with too many cooks in Hell's Kitchen.
Sure.
If
we know we're getting Punisher.
Yeah. But then however, like, why bring Bullseye in there if not to keep him around? I remember
right?
Yeah, I was watching I finished season 3 just last night, and watched Born Again this morning. And one of the things that I caught from the season 3 finale was that Poindexter was being operated on by Dr. Oyama. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Oyama in the comics is the one who introduces the whole idea of grafting adamantium to a human skeleton, which is what leads us to Wolverine later on. So I wonder if if Bullseye's spine is adamantium, because he was walking after that fall, and he was walking after season 3. And B, if that's a yes, which all signs point towards yes, is this another bridge along with
to X-Men?
Along with Eternal Island, Celestial Island from Brave New World, along with Miss Marvel, along with possibly Star-Lord. That's more of a stretch, but I have hopes in there. We'll see.
Yeah, that they are extending in the direction of the X-Men. That would make a lot of sense. I mean, you're right. Why don't you just kill him when he falls off that building if you're only going to have him in one episode?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he comes back in season 2. Maybe that's
maybe. No, but I hope he sticks around. Okay, so White Tiger, instead of being a one-off weekly legal thing, becomes sort of the overarching sort of case of the season. You're not feeling great about that. I feel like you know a lot more about it than I do. So what are your thoughts there?
So my concerns mainly come from what I know about the production and the actor playing Hector Ayala, the White Tiger. For those of you who don't know, there was a tribute at the start of this episode to the actor because he passed away in 2023. Yeah. Sadly due to cancer. So what does that mean for White Tiger going forward, not only for the show but also for the MCU? And that's what I was worried about, and kind of what I'm not sure if they were going to be doing a case of the week before this or not. I actually think he was going to be an overarching thing, but maybe he would be taking a longer period. And I think now they're sort of condensing it because of the outside circumstances. I think they might front load us with the White Tiger stuff and sort of get it out of the way by mid-season, so that we're just not thinking too much on that. And with that in mind, I am worried about how the pacing of the show is going to go. I really enjoyed how they did it in episode 2 so far, and I think they've been doing a really good job. But I worry if we're going to be getting some things that end up becoming too obvious out of order with how they originally had it.
I really liked that stuff that I thought worked with the White Tiger. I thought that his encounter with the police on the subway platform was a nice, clean little fight that we'll talk about.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed when he said, "I wasn't in my suit or wearing my amulet. I had no extra powers. It wasn't relevant." I just hadn't really considered that being in an MCU style world would mean that sometimes people would have to tell me that they didn't have their amulet on, which I think is really cool and I like a lot.
I didn't expect Matt Murdock just to later just toss that out when discussing with the judge.
He brings it up later. He's in the courtroom and he's like, "Well, you have his amulet on."
And he uses it as a legit argument as to why he shouldn't be tried as a vigilante. And I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, because he's Daredeviling again. He's getting silly. Okay, so the biggest scene, I think by far, was the opening scene of the first episode, which is sort of this little, is it like 18 minutes, I think, sort of contained, maybe shorter than that, maybe like 8 minutes. Maybe my notes are wrong.
Yeah.
But it's this one-off story. The crew goes to Rosie's in Hell's
Yeah, I
Kitchen
mean,
after a day at work. Bullseye shoots Foggy. He and Daredevil get into a fight. Daredevil tries to kill Bullseye.
mhm.
That all is good, and we've talked about it, and we can talk more about it. But the thing that we haven't touched on yet is this is also sort of their send up of the Daredevil signature one big long oneer,
Yeah.
which is a thing that they did in all the seasons on Netflix, and I think they did it on Defenders as well. It was sort of like a visual signature of the show after the one they did in season 1, episode 2, as sort of an old boy homage. Was incredibly popular and got like a ton of positive feedback online and from audiences, and so that sort of like kept that as a thing. So they do it in this sequence where Daredevil fights Bullseye after he's shot Foggy.
Hmm.
Well, let me ask you, just what did you think of that, like, as a decision?
I enjoyed it. I think it was a really good choice to include it in the first episode like that early on because it immediately like it's one of those things to like help brush off the concern of the people being like, oh no, they're not going to be doing it like the good old days. This is their way of showing yes we are,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they executed it very 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 well. There was definitely at least for me, like there was a couple of frames here and there where I could see the CGI, but like that's just me, and like I like am too eagle
It
eyed
wasn't
for that kind of shit.
it
But
wasn't the cleanest thing in the world. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree with
yeah,
you.
yeah. It wasn't. It was well. Funny you mentioned the word clean because it did look like visually it did look a lot cleaner than some of
Mm,
the stuff that we've seen from the original Daredevil show. But I thought it was really good. I still think it was overall very well paced. I think the fighting was very well paced. I liked how he just kept fighting back no matter how many fucking daggers was in his chest.
yeah, and
Um,
Dex just stayed killing. Like, there
yeah,
were more people in the bar. He just
it,
like got him on the way through.
if there was someone in the way, even if there wasn't someone in the way, Dex was throwing something at them. There
Yeah,
was like, what? This is how I. This is really points out how good I thought this was. In that, like one of the most gruesome hits that Dex did, we barely get to see because it's just him very close up to the camera and he just punches a woman that's like off frame. But
yeah,
we like hear it and we can feel the thud. That like overall, I thought that was really good.
yeah. So Philip Savela, I wanted to call out. Um, Philip Silvera is he's the second unit director and he's the action choreographer
Hmm.
on uh, Born Again. He was he had that same job on the original series. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so they,
perfect.
I think, just sort of let him go to town on this, sort of exactly to your point, to like stretch the bona fides of like,
Hmm.
we've still got the same guy doing our fights.
Yeah.
One decision they made that was very different in this version of the fight, though, than when we've seen them sort of attempt these things on the Netflix side, was that this one, and I watched a whole interview with Benson and Moorhead where they talked about this with IGN, um, but they used a really rigid style of camera movement where everything was much more locked down
Right.
than in other versions we've seen of this fight. It's sort of a over the shoulder handheld style camera
Hmm.
and just a guy on their feet. They said it's a show about a man who believes he has lost his chance at redemption and lost the blessings of his faith. The camera has similar omniscience. It already knows if Foggy dies. It already knows that Murdoch crosses the line on that roof. They describe the camera as being on the train tracks of fate, slowly and dispassionately moving through the scene, rather than the traditional Daredevil oneer, which is a more frenetic and excited to see what happens next.
Right.
Um, I thought that was really cool the way they put that, because you can
Hmm.
feel like the tension, not just of they're in a fight, but like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is I don't know
Right.
if Matt has
And
had a worse night, and I've seen him have a lot of bad nights, and we are starting with a really bad one. And you can just
and
tell throughout that fight, this isn't going to go great.
and I need to credit the sound mixing
Mm-hmm.
for this oneer as well, because throughout the oneer we could have had like match on action editing with Foggy like bleeding out on the sidewalk, and we actually
Yeah,
did have that at the end, at the very end of the fight scene.
right.
But if we had that throughout the whole fight scene, it would have detracted from the anxiety, from the tension, from the
Yeah.
action.
Well, no, we're stuck with Matt.
So that's one detail that I thought was really good. Has like, as we were focused on Matt, he was focused on two different things at once. He was fighting Bullseye, but he was also keeping a track of how Foggy was doing outside.
Mm-hmm.
And through the sound mixing, we were just bouncing back and forth between the thuds and the heartbeats, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I thought that ruled. It was and we'd already talked about how he just from the drop, we were in that bar and they were training us on this is what this show, what it looks
Mm-hmm.
like and sounds like on this show when we do the powers. So then we're in the fight and we're doing the powers and we're just immediately with it. Maybe you and I quicker than some because we just had our Daredevil rewatches, but no,
Right.
in general, I thought that this was really good filmmaking. Also thematically, there's just like a lot going on in this fight that I feel like is what the MCU more broadly is lacking right now. Like
Yes.
Deepak and I over on Weekly. If this is your first time with us, by the way, we have a podcast called Nerd Here Weekly where we talk about the top news stories of the week, but like in the nerdy entertainment realm. You can check that out on our YouTube, youtube.com/nerd here first. Hit subscribe. Deepak and I talk all the time about how there is like an appeal to a certain kind of action movie. The one I always like use to shorthand this is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? But it's not even like all kung fu movies. It's not even like all like that. I feel like it's especially more prevalent in Asian cinema than it is in Hollywood. It's just like there's a quality of movie where the fights link to like this emotional, interpersonal, like character based turmoil and conflict that we've seen like resonate out,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Um, Probably one of the reasons I'm so obsessed with Fast and Furious is I feel like those races in a lot of ways are like manifestations of like the emotional struggle these characters are going through. This has that, and I don't feel like a lot of the MCU does right now. Like a lot of the MCU feels like, well, we're in a movie, so we have to fight now. Like this is
Yeah.
what happened. And this fight between uh, Daredevil and Bullseye, I think really felt like it was about these characters. And like when Matt like half shrugs and tosses Dex over the building,
Mm-hmm.
like bounces his ass off the pavement, like in sort of a resigned exhale,
Yeah.
like the entirety of what this has done to him, I think, is really communicated to the character really well. Like he his friends, like this happened because they're his friends, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's happened because Foggy's his buddy. In the very comic booky move that we don't get a lot of in cool ways in the movies, where I can think of some poor ways this has been executed, but where Dex just sees her and he's like, "Hi, Karen." Like they know each other
Yeah.
because I
Like that.
fight.
It's his own little game from season 3. Yeah.
I try and kill your boyfriend. So yeah, like this happens because they're his friends. He has crossed this, like because I'm totally with him, right? I'm like, yeah, man, fucking kill him. Absolutely,
Yeah.
kill that man.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, you've got a free pass from me, dog. I have no problems with this. But you're not supposed to do that. Like you kind of like, I know that you don't like that you're doing that. All the ways that this feels important to this character, and then to have the result of all of that, like really dark, like really emotionally trying opening, right?
Yeah.
Is to then stick him in like ABC's Daredevil, where he like has these big naturally lit office space that he shares with this DA, and to have it be like it's a court show now. I just think that is such a fascinating way to get to this show by being like, yeah, but what if the worst thing ever happened to him and this is the only way he knew how to keep moving?
Yeah, I think that was like brilliantly done, because it also gives them like an excuse to like show how some of what they originally had before the overhaul can work. Was just
Yeah.
like giving them that prelude to like how Matt got into this position, and how
Yeah.
Matt got into this like sort of like very much more of a legal man than vigilante.
Now, all that being said, I think I liked episode 2 more.
Really,
Yeah. Like
I
I got what episode 1 was doing. I liked episode 2 just as a TV show. I was like, this is good. I could do this for 16 weeks in a row.
I could see that. I think I liked episode one more. Episode one definitely reminded me a lot more of the original series.
Which is
Um,
totally fair.
and maybe that's what I'm catching, especially like that last shot of him looking up at Fisk, newly elected, and the lights flashing red on half of his face.
Yeah,
That
that's like all. Yeah, that's like
took
it's.
me all the way back to 3 weeks ago, because that's when I started watching the show.
Yeah, yeah,
But I enjoyed a lot of season two, and one thing that I enjoyed about both of them sorry, episode two, but what I liked about both of them together in the first week is that we got this first week like bookended, like, oh, we only got Daredevil in the like at the very beginning of the first episode and at the very end of the second episode,
yeah,
and everything was like in between that, and I think that was really good pacing, because we saw it at the very beginning, like they satisfied us there, they gave us the foggy stuff, and then we were asking for it again up until like the end of episode two, and I think that was a really good build up.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we're still not all the way back, right? It's just like, oh,
No,
that
because like, yeah,
that's
that was just
inevitable.
like,
Like, if there was ever any doubt he was going to be able to pull out of this nosedive, he's not going to be able to.
yeah. He was letting them like just beat the shit out of him
When
until
he
he
was
found
like,
out
he said, where'd he go? And Matt said, hey man, I'd love to help, but I'm visually impaired.
I really enjoy the blind quips.
Yeah.
I recently, if you haven't seen Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man,
Oh, that's the animated one.
yeah, he shows up in one episode there and like just have a brief spar bit with Spider-Man, and then like he dodges some things, and Spider-Man's like, God, I guess you saw that coming. He goes, no, I didn't. Yeah.
Remember when they were in the diner and Matt says like, you've lost weight and put on muscle, and Kingpin's like, I'm not gonna spar with you, Murdoch. Just like, oh, that'd be wild if he wanted to fight you in this coffee shop, man.
Just fighting the mayor elect.
Yeah. All right, so the second episode didn't have as many fight scenes. We've sort of already talked about them. There was the action sequence where White Tiger unknowingly fights two police officers, and one of them ends up getting hit by a train. And then there's one at the end where two other police officers fight Matt, and they're about to shoot him point blank in the head, and he has to Daredevil out on their asses, even though he's trying not to Daredevil anymore. One of the cops had a Punisher tattoo on his wrist. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there is more of like a Punisher following in this version of New York. I'd be curious about that. You know, like the guy who in the real world drives around with a Punisher bumper sticker. Like
there is one like comic run out there. I think it's a Punisher comic run where he is just taking out a band of corrupt police officers who are like, quote unquote, following his footsteps and like doing what he does, but like it's a completely different type of moral code than what he has, and he's heavily offended by it and goes after them. So I think that's how we will eventually get Punisher in this show, hopefully.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But we'll see. Yeah,
that'd be really cool.
I'm curious if like taking a little bit of creative freedom and like sort of like intersecting different comic books, I wonder if they will eventually show that maybe this corrupt police force was like put together by Fisk in some sort of way.
Oh, I mean, he's got to listen. If there's one thing I know about my man, It's that he is out here doing a crime. I know we can't find it yet, but he's doing crimes. He's not just
Who was
being.
he punching?
Who did he punch? It wasn't. I saw some people speculating that it was the boyfriend. Um,
I think it would
Adam.
be too soon for that because like
Is that his
Vanessa would
name?
catch on immediately. Yes, Adam.
Yeah, because they have that conversation out on the veranda or whatever, where
Yeah.
he's like, "I know about Adam," and she's like, "Please don't kill him."
Yeah, that's the
Um,
thing. If Vanessa saw Adam beat up or like anything like that, she would
yeah,
just know it's Fisk.
right, and then she wouldn't go to
Yeah,
therapy with him.
exactly.
I like that they're in therapy. I hope
That
that.
that
I mean, again, that's a Tony Soprano thing, right? Here now we have this big time mob boss who has to go to therapy,
but
but having it be a couples counseling.
yeah, no, I like how they faked us out because at first it looked like it was just Kingpin, and then like when it was just Kingpin, your thought was like, oh, he's just here to kill her, or he's just here to keep her in his pocket. But when you
Sure,
see that
yeah.
Vanessa is there as well, you're like, oh no, he's actually like trying to get something out of this.
Let me hit you with something.
Hmm.
So, at the beginning of episode 2, which is called Optics, his
Yeah,
like campaign manager is talking him through the day and all these meet and greets they're going to have to do and all this stuff. And
talking
she
about
says,
optics.
she says, the situation between you and your wife right now, uh, her not being, you know, her not
Right.
wanting to go along with the narrative, her resistance to be part of the narrative is hurting Fisk with more traditional voters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's like, we are in, like, this is an inconvenient time for this. Like, can you give us a little while? And that's sort of the implication, is that like
Right.
they're gonna go to therapy and hopefully he's gonna be able to like bring her more on side. What
What?
if, what if
Mm-hmm.
this is where they go to do business dealings and their therapist can't talk about it because she's bound by like therapy ethics, and this is how they like meet together to do like organized crime negotiations, is they pretend to go to couples counseling.
And then just and meanwhile just traumatizing the shit out of Matt's new girlfriend.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, Matt's new girlfriend is like, you're never gonna believe, I can't talk to you about them, but these clients I have are driving me insane.
Well, I'd have to ask my girlfriend, who is like a marriage and family therapist, by the way.
Mm.
But I'm pretty sure if like a patient tells you or like a client tells you, you're another thing I learned from my girlfriend who's a therapist, you shouldn't call them patients.
Oh,
If a
okay.
client tells you that they're going to commit a crime, not that they have committed a crime. If they have
Oh,
committed a
that's a
crime,
good
it's like
point. Yeah.
it's like water on the bridge. Don't like you can't worry about it anymore. If you learn like directly they're going to commit a crime, you
Yeah.
can't report it.
Even if it's like
You're,
racketeering.
that's a good point.
I mean, we'll find
Maybe
out.
yeah.
I don't
I have to
want that
look.
to be the case, only because Fisk Family Therapy sounds very enjoyable to me as
Yeah, no,
television.
I'm so excited to see just family therapy, and I'm glad they put Vanessa in there to not just make it a Sopranos parallel.
Yeah,
I'm
right. Yeah,
excited to see what we're doing with
100%.
this.
100%. Okay, so you brought up Heather. We haven't really talked about Heather yet. Heather
Hmm.
is Matt's girlfriend, who is a professional counselor,
Yes.
and who gets set up with Matt on a date by his replacement law firm partner. He replaced Foggy in a
Yeah,
year.
can we acknowledge the fact that he replaced Foggy with the girl Foggy was hitting on?
The girl Foggy was trying to sleep with. That's how he honored his friend.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
Foggy wanted to sleep with you the night he died, and so in honor of his legacy, I would like you to be my new law firm partner. Um, she sets him up with Heather. They meet. Matt puts the Mac down as he always does. My man has an endless supply of Riz. That's one of the powers he got when he got hit clunked in the face with those acids.
Hmm.
And so they start dating. Have you, Bruno, ever seen the film Batman Forever?
It's my favorite Batman film,
Right.
and
I
I'll
thought
die on
so.
that hill.
I thought so. Does this have Dr. Chase Meridian vibes to you?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Like she's writing a book called Live Without Fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then she says her next project is going to be about how we present a curated version of ourselves to the public. For example, using social media filters or masks.
I had to take a lap when I saw the name of her book. I paused the episode and I just like walked away for a second.
Live without fear. Yeah, but it looks like, I mean, it's like a self-help book or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, while she's at a signing for that book, talking about how her next project is about her boyfriend who she's studying, she is approached by the man who will become the villain of our story.
Yes.
Can
I'm blanking out on the actor's name, but yeah, he will eventually Hunter Duhan. Hunter
Yeah,
Dunham.
Duhan.
Duhan. Hunter Duhan, who will be portraying Muse in the show, and that's something I'm very excited for. I'm wondering, like, if he probably has, like, at least the way that I saw that scene, he has just like a connection to the book and to Heather. That's he's not there because of Daredevil, right?
No. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so
I don't even know if he is Muse yet, although I don't really know too much about Muse. I would love a Muse
um
primer. But no,
well, if
yeah, I thought he was just
uh,
there because he was into the book or obsessed with her or something.
if you want a good Muse primer, the again, God, how can I be blanking on it? But his last name is Soul. His Daredevil
Oh,
comic
is it
book run,
Charles Soule?
Charles Soule. I believe Charles Soule comic book run is the one that introduces Muse, and then also leads directly into Zdarsky's
Oh, okay.
Daredevil as well. And Muse is a big part of Zdarsky's Daredevil too. So if
What's his deal, Muse?
he's he is a serial killer who
Oh,
usually, like, when it comes to his, and he does these murals all over Manhattan, not Manhattan, sorry, Hell's Kitchen, but
sure.
the
Which we've
it's
heard people talking about on like the radio and stuff in the background that these murals
exactly.
have been going up. Okay.
And what people don't know is that the red on the murals is blood,
Oh,
and he is using that from the blood of his victims. So I'm curious to see how much of Muse we're going to get. We did see a few brief frames of him in like the trailers, um, and he looks like just bit by bit exactly like the comic book character.
hmm.
And he's I don't I don't think he has a hand in killing Foggy in the comics, but he has a big hand in killing like someone close to Daredevil, not to give spoilers, and that leads him down a very like dark path of hunting Muse down, which is what I thought they were going to do with Foggy. I not to give too much away, but I kind of knew going into the show that Foggy was going to die in the first episode, just off of some scoops that I had seen, and
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be their way of introducing Muse, rather than bringing back Bullseye.
Mm.
And but
Right.
now
And
that
which
that's
again, I
not a
think goes back to the Bullseye must be sticking around point because otherwise, just have Muse
right,
do it. Yeah.
exactly, because that's exactly what I was expecting the whole time. But with that in mind, we have Muse coming up in the background. People don't really know that he's this. This is like a little bit of spoilers to like even the viewers of the show, because so far we haven't really seen Muse yet. But
Yeah.
there's going to be something coming up with him. And now that we've already seen Hunter Doohan without the mask and with Heather, I'm kind of worried about Heather. I'm worried about what's going to happen to her eventually. Um, I think we
Man,
could get, if anyone's seen The Patient with one of the Gleasons, I'm blanking on his name now, and Steve Carell on Hulu.
oh,
I'm getting a lot of vibes of that off of Hunter Doohan's character with Heather.
it's Donald Gleason.
Donald Gleason, thank you.
Man, I just pulled up a list of Daredevil villains just to be like, who are the big ones, right? Like, who are the
Mm-hmm.
ones people? Because I was like, oh, all the ones I know, I feel like I've basically done on the show already. So, like, who are the ones they haven't done on the show? Okay, Bullseye, done him. Kingpin, done him. The Hand, done him. Elektra, done him. Punisher, done him. Purple Man, done him. Typhoid Mary, did we do her on any of them? Owl, done him. Nuke, we've done him. Gladiator, we've done him. Mysterio, we've done him. We haven't done Stilt Man. I guess you could use Stilt Man, but like so many of these characters they have already gone through in some form or another, either in the MCU proper or in like the
Mm-hmm.
Defenders verse, that it's impressive to me that you can still be like, oh, let's do serial killer who spray paints the walls with his victim's blood. We haven't done that guy yet. That guy's
Yeah,
messed up.
yeah.
So I'm glad they're still pulling good ones, because otherwise they'd be stuck with Stilt Man.
There because like in comics, Daredevil is already a very like grounded character. So like even aside from his like biggest villains, you can dig into that comic and you can find some really really good source material for a lot of very grounded villains like Muse.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah.
So we've got these themes, right, of like living without fear, or like how we kind of project out different versions of ourselves. We've got these sort of larger motifs of Kingpin and Daredevil as these two men who are trying to live new lives without acknowledging the past versions of themselves. Um, we've got sort of this bubbling instability that keeps people keep bringing up the fact that the police in the city are not doing great. Like, we open with Karen telling us that like a third of the force has retired over the last 5 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of police officers are ready to retire because of Fisk's mayorship. Um, there's sort of like BB Urick. We haven't talked about her yet. We'll keep an
Right.
eye. I don't know if I have too many opinions about her yet, but she mentions
I
the
don't.
police bill.
I don't think BB Urick's anyone from the comics. I think this is someone like completely original to the MCU. So I'm very curious about her and like what
Me
we will
too.
see coming out of her.
Her and uh, Michael Soprano. I can't think. I'm blanking.
Yeah. God, what was that character's name? But Michael Gandolfini's character. Yes.
Yeah, right. We were joking about how it Don Blake or something, I think.
Yes,
Anyway,
Daniel Blake. Sorry,
Daniel Blake. Watching those
Donald
two.
Blake is Thor.
That's right. Donald Blake is Thor. That's a great point. Watching those two, I wonder if anything comes of that. But she also brings up the police thing. This feels like we're going to hit a point where like we almost need the White Tigers and Daredevils and Punishers and Spider-Men and whoever else to like come out of the woodwork if we hit sort of a crisis level point where there's just not enough police to handle, you know, whatever the end
Absolutely,
game
we're
of all this is going to be.
we're still like too early on to like really tell for sure. But I think we will be pulling in like villains from other like superheroes and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think one of the main reasons that they want to set up Kingpin as mayor, and one of the reasons that they decided to add in a couple of certain things and that one shot of the Times Square, is that in season 2 or season 3 they'll bring Luke Cage back in to rival him,
that'd be great.
and like with that we have that whole rogues gallery of characters to bring in as well.
Yeah, and I'd be very here for that. If you could somehow bring in everyone except Danny Rand, I'd be
Well, I
here
mean,
for that.
I yeah, was it in the? No, it wasn't in Defenders, but I did see somewhere that like by the end of Iron Fist, he had like passed off the mantle to someone else. So if
Yeah, right.
anything,
Yeah,
we would
yeah.
just get like whoever that is.
I do remember that. Yeah, that's right. Perfect. Boom, clean, done.
Yeah.
No, what do you mean? In our universe, Danny Rand's an Asian guy. What are you talking about? That's the world that the three of us are all from.
God, when I saw that Iron Fist was in Rivals, I was so worried until I saw that they had the actual correct Iron Fist in there.
Just a lot of decisions were made, and people were so confident. Okay? Do you have any big predictions about what happens this season?
I think we'll
This
be
season?
seeing this season. I think we'll be seeing Fisk as mayor throughout this whole season.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think he's losing this season at all. I
It's only
gosh,
9 episodes, right? It's
that is true.
we got the 2 last night. We'll
Mm-hmm.
have one on March 11th. We'll have one on March 18th. Then we get 2 on March 25th. Then one on April 1st, one on April 8th, and one on April 15th. That
Interesting how we are getting 2 episodes there, like smacked in the middle.
Yeah, right. Agreed. Curious what
Yeah,
happens there.
yeah. That one's a bit of a hmm.
Yeah. Um, I'm with you. I think Fisk stays mayor. I think I think my expectation is that the Muse stuff will start to bubble over pretty quickly. He did not look especially stable last time we saw him.
Yeah. It,
Uh
if I had to guess, Muse is eventually going to come after Heather, maybe even
yeah,
after White
definitely.
Tiger. Well,
Yeah.
like there's going to be more than a couple characters that are probably going to go down to Muse.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. I hope
Absolutely.
Punisher shows up next week. That's my big hope for next week is let's get Punisher back in here. Like if we are spinning up old like legacy characters, let's just however many we're bringing this season, let's get them in here.
We need someone to tell Matt about the skull because
Yeah.
Matt did not see the skull.
No. No, and he knows the guy who would not take kindly to this.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you before we get out of here.
Mhm.
Just give me some sort of a rating, either out of 10, either thumbs up, thumbs down. Rank it amongst the other Daredevil that you watch in lead up to this. How'd you feel about what we got so far?
I'm giving the first 2 episodes a decent 8 out of 10. When it comes to like comparing it to the originals, we're only 2 episodes into this season, but from what I've seen so far, I very easily rank this season above season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I maybe have it on par with season 1. My just shout out to everyone out there. My personal favorite is season 3.
Mm.
Um, there was there was a lot of stylistic and technical choices used with the cinematography and lighting and Defenders that I was like, oh, I wish they used this more in Daredevil. And then they used it in season 3 of Daredevil, and I was like, cool. So Daredevil Daredevil season 3 is like so far my top of the list, but I easily have this like tied with the first season for second place.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm with you. I really like what we've got so far. I'm excited to see more. I'm looking forward to episode 3. I watched the first 2 last night when they posted, and I could have kept going. I had already been in binge mode, and I just wanted to stay in binge mode. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more of this. I am not missing the stuff like the Foggy and the Karen and all that as much as I thought I would be. I think that they justified the removal of some of those legacy objects in a good way. I think they got like the Daredevil Fisk stuff going really quickly. Um, I think that they have a compelling case for him to come back as Daredevil. Like I can see him sort of being on the.
Mhm.
I don't think it's going to be all 9 episodes before he puts the costume back on. Um, so yeah, I want more of it. I'm excited
Yeah.
to keep it going. I do hope that when we get to the end of it, it feel like it was a TV show and not that it would have been better served as a movie. Um,
Oh no, absolutely. I think so far they're proving that it would be better off as a TV show rather than a movie.
yeah,
Because even as a movie, I think you would just end up becoming one of those like special presentation things that just goes
mm,
directly to Disney Plus, and then that
yeah,
wouldn't be
which also
getting
would have sucked. Yeah,
the credit it deserves.
yeah.
On the Karen bit, I just want to like put it out really quick. She did mention she's in San
She
Francisco.
lives in San Francisco. Yeah,
Yep, so that's exactly where Shang Chi is. Like,
yep. That did
I
also ping for me.
we'll see where Wonder Man ends up when we get to December this year, but maybe we're getting to a West Coast Adventures, and I'll be very excited if that's where we're going.
Ant-Man's West Coast.
Is he?
Uh,
I forget.
wasn't San Francisco the original? I don't know where 2 was. 2 and 3 both took place just on a green screen, but 1 because I remember them doing the
No,
hills.
two was what you're remembering is from two.
Oh, well, okay.
They're in two. They were definitely in San Francisco. I'm not sure about three.
Gotcha.
some people think from 3 that he's in a completely different universe, but we'll see. Who knows?
I hope that they are able to get West Coast Avengers and Dark Avengers and all that stuff set up really soon. Because I feel like we have enough characters. Let's just do it. Go for it. Be brave.
I'm gonna be reading the current West Coast Avengers as soon as we hop off the recording.
Awesome. Well, with that, let me just remind everybody that you can get more stuff from us on our website, nihf.com, or at our YouTube, youtube.com/nerditherefirst. You can also follow us on the socials at nerditherefirst, wherever you follow social media listings. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, using phrases like social media listings. Until next week, when we will be back to cover more Daredevil action. Protection makes people scared. Profit makes them loyal.